We are now recording.
I can't even see out my glasses.
Okay, you can begin.
Ready?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for participating in the second quarter Military and Veterans Coalition of One. We are a nonprofit volunteer service organization. My name is Jennifer Jackson Trotter. I am the founder and CEO. The moderator for today's town hall briefing is David Gibbert. He is also VP of Operations. The coalition empowers veterans who are adjusting to life at home to find meaningful purpose through community impact. Our main goal is in helping veterans, serving veterans, just like we deployed when we went to different duty stations across different duty assignments out of the country. Our goal here is to deploy veterans on missions within our communities, within their communities, so that their actions will inspire future generations to serve. We are so excited. We are so excited about connecting military veterans and civilian volunteers to their local community through social engagement, community support projects, and community service projects. The execution of these projects will be from a monthly to a quarter basis, and sometimes on an annual basis. And this all will be done in collaboration with the different veteran service organizations. The veteran service organizations are organizations like VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, AMVETS, American Veterans, DAV, which is Disabled American Veterans, but not limited to just those. Also with different veteran support groups, like some of the ones that we have on the call today, Gratitude America, the Wounded Warrior Project, and also the Mission Continue, not limited to. Also through local church organizations, through their outreach veteran ministries. We need to connect veterans with those veterans so that they will share their information in a safe space, safe place, and not feel overwhelmed with whatever it is that they're going through. So with that said, David, we'll start with the first slide, please. Oh, I can't even see that.
It's up.
Yeah, but I can't see it. It's a little blurry. Is it blurry to anyone else?
No, it's good. It's good, Jennifer.
It's clear.
I told her to buy a better computer, but she just don't listen.
Okay, that's okay. Let me change my glasses. Maybe it's my glasses. Give me a second. No, it's not that. Okay, it is blurry. But just to follow along as much as I can, the agenda for today is, as you see here. First, we'll start out with myself introducing. Again, I'm Jennifer Trotter. I'm the CEO. Dave Gibbert is the operations, VP of Operations. Next slide, please. The coalition mission. The mission is to be one voice, one team for action, uniting and advocating for veterans, veteran service organizations, and also to share this information with the local, state and city officials so that we can bring about some type of change for veterans. Next slide, please. And I briefly mentioned the purpose and what our intentions are as I was speaking earlier. Our main goal is to connect veterans with veterans, connect veterans with various resources and within the community. Next slide, please. Here we have our 6 core tenets. And David, if you can go ahead and start with this, I would appreciate it.
Okay. What you're looking at here is a collaborative effort with members that were from organizations such as the DAV, the VFW, Gold Star Mothers, Warrior Alliance, Vets to Industry, American Legion, and several others like Veterans Helping Veterans, Vet Atlanta, Georgia Military Women. We all came together and we started to take a look at issues. The first issue that we really started to work was in what you see, this highlighted yellow box, where we heard that the state of Georgia was going to strip out the budget for the Georgia Department of Veterans Services. So we all came together as one unifying voice, and we believe our efforts contributed to saving that organization, which was going to eliminate about 50 field offices where veterans can walk into those offices and get assistance from things like claims, educational benefits, spousals that may need help with burial of their loved ones, and so forth. So we all came together, and literally we had one of our representatives go kind of knock on the doors of the representatives across the state legislature to make sure that we did not lose them in that fight. So, but then from there, we began to take a look at other issues such as, well, let's take a look at some veteran service things. So we've done some things in that regard, and you can see our effort here today goes toward priority 4 in that second box, where we're looking at, figuring out ways to work issues regarding suicide prevention. But it goes on from there. We've done things in the educational realm as well, such as we've had a online virtual financial literacy class, and we've also had an online home ownership mortgage class as well. And of course, we will continue to work in the various areas. We're actively trying to figure out ways to improve the livelihood of veterans that find themselves homeless as well. And over in the Fisher House box under number 5, we got several of the veteran service organizations that were collaborating with us to all send a letter out asking that we prioritize the construction of Fisher houses. And we were fortunate here in the state of Georgia to actually get 2 of those, and one is about to begin to break grounds here real soon. And you can see some of the other things that we're doing as well. And as far as jobs are concerned, we're sharing information when we get it with regards to how to get information out to the various service organizations so that they will be able to help facilitate veterans that may need jobs, and particularly those that are transitioning from active or Guard or reserve military service back into just a general, civilian workforce environment. But before we get into the overall meat and bones of today's seminar, just want to quickly highlight some of the various things that we've been able to do. We've been communicating with legislators, and I would give kudos to Senator Perdue and Congresswoman McBath. They were instrumental in keeping us informed and abreast of the things that are going on in the community. And even though we no longer have Senator Perdue as one of our elected officials, we are now engaging with Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock's office, while we continue to get great support out of Congresswoman McBath's office. And I briefly mentioned the Fisher House. There's an actual official VA newsletter that made the announcement on the various ones. And if your eyes are as good as mine, on that second dot in that newsletter, you'll see it states that Carl Vinson. That's the facility that is about to begin to break grounds here in Georgia. And we still have one more that we'll hopefully get them to start breaking grounds on this year. A couple have already asked, will you have access to the slides, and will we be able to get a copy of the video? So what we've also done is we've created a YouTube channel. And if you want to go back and take a look at our first quarter seminar, which really was supposed to be just us asking veterans what are they seeing as far as their issues, concerns are within their community, but it kind of morphed into more folks really wanting to talk about claims and benefits. So we recognize that, and so we're going to begin to work on quarterly seminars or workshops that can help veterans along the way with that as well. So what I would like to do at this point, I'm just gonna quickly stop sharing. And I'm gonna go over and bring up our next presenter, who is I would like to call the meat and potatoes of today's presentation. If you all will just bear with me here for a second. Still got folks kind of coming into the room, so I'm gonna let them in.
While David is doing that, this is Jennifer speaking again. We're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for volunteers to support us in each of the 6 core tenets. So if you have a special skills, special talent, or if you're just passionate about what we're doing, please reach out to myself or either David and let us know which area you'd like to serve in.
And
thank you.
From this point forward, you're gonna get at least 2 more briefings beyond this briefing. So what I would just like to say for the rules, if you have a specific question regarding a specific presentation, post that information or that question in the chat, and then we will discuss as we go from one briefing to the next. We'll have a short session to discuss any issues or questions that you may have of the briefer or the presenter, and then we'll just continue from there. So at this point, I would just like to personally thank the representatives from the VA, and particularly from their suicide prevention program, for jumping up and really being willing to support us in this effort. We personally have passionate views with regards to the loss of life of any veteran, regardless of where and how it occurs. And it's a particularly touching when we know that we may lose a veteran simply because they just have given up hope or may have some mental disorder that just causes them to take their own lives. So I would like to now introduce to you Ms. Shelley Lamb, and she can further give you all of her bells and whistles, accomplishments and accomplishments that bring her to the point of being the authority in the job that she holds. Ms. Lamb, it's all yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting Suicide Prevention and the Atlanta VA to be a part of this town hall meeting. It is certainly an honor, and we don't take it lightly, because we always like to be able to get out into the community and talk about suicide prevention as much as we can. And, you know, education is the key. You know, more you know, the more you're able to help. So just a little bit about me, and boy, no pressure, meat and potatoes. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was meat and potatoes. But my name is Shelley Lamb, and I am a licensed clinical social worker, or clinical social worker at the Atlanta VA. I work in the suicide prevention program, and I just wanted to add, I'm so glad to see that you work with homelessness, because prior to suicide prevention, I did work in the homeless program for about 6 years. So that is also my passion, to work with homeless vets. And of course, you know, you do get a crossover with homeless veterans and suicide prevention. And that's probably what brought me to suicide prevention, because while I was in the homeless program, I did have one completion. And of course, you always question, did I say everything I was supposed to do? Did I catch enough signs? Is there something I could have done? And of course, we all do the best we can with what we do know. So the purpose of this training today is to maybe perhaps give you a little bit more information of what to look for, and maybe, you know, help that veteran that's in need. So if you would turn to the second, and thank you so much for uploading my slides. I appreciate that. I don't have to worry about that part. So could you go to the second slide, please? So a little housekeeping before we start. We know that suicide is an intense topic for some people, because either they have committed suicide and they're still with us, or they've had a family member or somebody who they know committed suicide and feel like they don't have all the answers to the question. So again, as we always say, if you need to take a break and step out, of course, if you need to take a break from the presentation, you know, perfectly fine, no offense. But if while we're talking about the presentation, you do feel like there are feelings of something that does come up, we did want you to know that we do have a Veterans Crisis Line or Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is listed on the screen, 1-800-273-8255. It is a national line. Anyone can call. civilian or military, ex-military, you just press 1 at the prompt if you're a veteran. So you call the crisis line, you press 1 at the prompt. Again, crisis, something that was interesting, I did a Facebook Live, and something that did come up is crisis can be anything. So crisis, this is primarily a suicide prevention line, but crisis can be anything that you feel like you cannot manage and you need somebody to talk to. It is manned 24/7. And one of the slides, we're going to talk about the crisis line a little bit. It is manned 24/7 by counselors. So feel free to call day or night if you feel like you're in crisis. Again, it says press 1. Another way to connect is the text. So there is a number you can text 828-38255. And of course, there's online chat. So as we have different generations, we have who like text and online chat. We have a variety of ways for you to connect if you are in need. Okay, I'm ready for my next slide. Okay, so overview of today, we're going to talk as quickly as I can. I know I have about 30 minutes. Our objectives, facts about suicide, a few myths, the steps of SAVE or SAVE. We're going to talk about what that acronym means. And then at the end, a few resources and references. So I'm ready for next slide. So by participating in this training, oh, go back, please, sir. Okay, so I was going to go back and say by participating in this training, we're hoping that you're going to get these few things. Okay, there. You have a general understanding of the scope of suicide within the United States, know how to identify a veteran who may be at risk for suicide, and what to do when you do identify that veteran. Okay, now I'm ready for the next slide. So you don't have to answer this question. You can, if you would like, to put it in the chat just to hear yourself. But what is the biggest question around suicide and talking to, and my box is in the way, but I think it says people in crisis. So why do we even ask this question? Because a lot of people have not dealt with how they feel about suicide themselves. And though a lot of people have moral beliefs regarding suicide, especially if you're a particular religious organization. But we have to, so somebody said shame. Very good. Somebody said shame. So what's the biggest question? Again, so prior to me coming, I always think about this. I do a group at our domiciliary. And one of the biggest things we talk about is mortality. I worked in hospice prior to coming to the VA. And one of the biggest things that people never talk about is how do you feel about death? Whether it's your death, somebody else's death, because that will affect your ability to have a conversation with somebody surrounding suicide, or even maybe how you're feeling about suicide. So I always tell people, take that question and think about it. How do you feel about not only suicide, but death in particular? Because then that pulls up a lot, and that for a lot of people pulls up a lot of philosophical things, but it could also pull up a lot of concrete things. Okay. So go ahead to the next slide, please, sir. So facts about suicide, next slide. So before we get into a little bit of more of the meat and potatoes, just some general facts, because some people are fact finders. So this information this information I'm about to share is related to reports on deaths from 2005 to 2017. More recent data is being gathered, but it is up to this point. So it looked at veterans' death, it looked at non-veterans' death, and compared it across genders and and age groups. Okay, so I'm ready for the next. Okay, so nationally, over 45,000 Americans died by suicide in 2017, which included 6,139 veterans. So of that 40,000, 6,000 of them were veterans. I always say that's too much. You know, when I do a group, it's interesting because veterans will say, wow, that's not a lot. That doesn't seem like a lot if you think about a million or billion people on the planet, but it's a pretty large number. In 2017, the suicide rate for veterans was 1.5 or 1.5 times the rate for non-veterans. Why? the bottom part. Why are veterans more at risk? You have your younger veterans, your OEF, OAF veterans. So I'm going to briefly touch on, I'm looking at my time to make sure. Younger veterans. So when you think about your age groups, from your veteran, from your Vietnam, all the way down to your OAF, you think about your baby boomers versus your Gen Zs or Gen X, Y, and Z, right? Depending on what kind of trauma or what they experienced prior to going into the service, now you compound, if you think about it, compound that trauma when you get into service based on what have they seen, what have they experienced. Also, if you go in at a pretty young age, think about it. If you go in at young age, let's say that you're 17, the service creates that structure for you. So when you come out and you've been in for a very long time, what do I do now? Now that I'm out, I was told when to wake up. I was given I was given my meals. I was given somewhere to sleep. I was told what to do. Now you come out and you have to create that structure for yourself. And that can be a challenge for a lot of veterans post-discharge. Okay. Women veterans, a unique population all in of itself. And that group sometimes encompasses what we call MST or military sexual trauma, which is no longer limited to women. Men are now coming out and saying that they also experience military sexual trauma. So you have all that goes with being a woman veteran, right? And that was used to be predominantly male dominated. Now we have women that are serving more. And so we have to talk about the unique challenges that are related to women. Veterans in a period of transition. So again, we're talking about going from being in military life to civilian life, and all that encompasses. Because if you think about it, you know, like again, the structure going to, for example, with your homeless veterans, I'm going from now I have to pay for my housing, I have to pay for my bills. So going from having everything taken care of to now I'm responsible. And how do I transition if I've not been used to that? Okay. Veterans with exposure to suicide. So a lot of veterans in some of my groups, that's partly why they also think about suicide, is they've had a close friend, a military buddy that committed suicide, and they couldn't understand why, because they served together. They just couldn't understand that situation. So they've been exposed to suicide. So now they're thinking about suicide, and how do we help them with that? And the last one was veterans with access to lethal means. So one of the things that we talk about is what do most veterans have access to? Like guns, right? That's what they were trained to use. Most like to keep them under their pillow or keep them for safekeeping in the house. So the more lethal, and we're going to talk about this, the more lethal the means, and we're going to talk about men versus women and lethal means, but I'm just going to stop there and say, they have more access to lethal means. The VA does offer gun locks because, as one of the slides is going to show, the more time we can put between the crisis and the actual use of the means, the greater the chance the person is going to survive the suicide. So what does that mean? Think about it. If I offer you a gun lock and gun is the means that you're going to use for suicide, you have to unlock the gun lock. Then you have to do a few more things to fidget with it before you can actually use the gun. So the more time that you can put between access or accessing the means and them actually having the thought of suicide is the greater the chance of survival. Okay. All right, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about risk and protective. What is risk and what is protective factors? So risk factors, prior suicide attempts, 25% of those who have committed suicide are likely to do it again. So if somebody comes to your office or comes into your presence and says, I'm thinking about suicide, and you do the assessment and you ask them and they say, I've done this before, chances are they're thinking about, and they're high on the risk of doing it again. Why? Because they know what it feels like, smells like, tastes like. They might still be in the same crisis that brought them to the first attempt. So we always want to make sure that we do a thorough assessment and ask that question. Have you ever had thoughts of harming yourself before? And that will help you to bring about assessing that. Mental health issues are always a big risk factor, especially uncontrolled mental health, whether by medication or being in some form of treatment. A lot of people have undiagnosed mental health issues. I always tell veterans, because this is what helps them understand. You remember how before we had the earpiece in the phone, in the ear for the phone, a lot of people would walk around talking to themselves and those voices would talk back and tell them. Similar thing. A lot of people walk around and think something is perfectly normal, depression, perfectly normal because they've lived with it all their life until they hit a crisis mode. Then that's when they realize something is wrong. Similar PTSD. A lot of veterans live with PTSD and don't realize it's PTSD until they stop being able to function to some degree. So a lot of people do walk around with mental health issues, and we as either clinicians, providers, or service organizations need to realize that a lot of people either, and it could also be access, lack of knowledge, to know that they can access, for example, your organization or other organizations to get the help that they need. So the more education that we can, such as this town hall meeting, the more information we can get out there, the better it will be for veterans to know, and just a general to know that they can access that. Substance abuse, that goes along a little bit with mental health. As we know, a lot of veterans do have substance, especially when in the homeless program, and that contributes to a lot of other things. Lack of employment, lack of housing, loss of relationships. So substance abuse and mental health can contribute to a lot of things. Access to lethal means, we talked a little bit about that. We're going to also break it down. So guns aren't the only means that people use to commit suicide. Recent loss. So loss, think about it as not just a death, but maybe a loss of a relationship, loss of independence. Let's say that they came out of the service and they're now having to wear a prosthesis. So a lot of loss can not just mean a death. It could be loss of a lot of things. Legal or financial challenges, that kind of speaks for itself. We have a lot of justice involved veterans, and we do have a veterans justice outreach program at the VA, which does help our justice involved veterans and help advocate with them on behalf of them with the court, especially if they do have mental health and substance abuse issues that contributed to the legal issues. Okay, and again, we talked a little bit about financial challenges, managing money. What do I do if I have substance abuse or mental health issues and I finally got my 100% disability, and then I'm going to get back pay? Learning how to manage all of that when you've never had that much money before. So financial challenges could not be just not having, but having so much that you now need to know how to navigate doing that, if that makes sense. Okay, relationship issues, we talked about that. A lot of veterans in substance or mental health issues have relationship issues, not just having to negotiate current issues, but perhaps because being in the service, trauma does a lot to people and can create that rift. Substance can create that rift. Not knowing how to relate in the first place and now having to relate in a different way coming out of the service. All of those can be risk factors. Unemployment, we talked about that. Homelessness, we talked about that. Okay, so protective factors. These are things that can help ameliorate or help the veteran in terms of thinking about suicide. Access to mental health care, talked about that, getting them into care. Okay. A sense of connectedness. So what does that even mean? You know, the pandemic has kind of really brought that to the forefront. Feeling connected, feeling like somebody out there cares. I mean, virtual is cool, but sometimes that in-person touch, a lot of people really miss, especially now. So having a sense of that somebody cares about what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling. I'll use a quick example. In my group, I had a veteran who expressed that he was on a bridge thinking of jumping, but he's here. So I always like to ask them this question because somehow it gets the wheels to turning. I said, well, you tried to commit suicide. Why are you still here? What happened? He said somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, oh, you sure you want to do this? You know, somebody really cares. That one thing made him turn this way. Now, all stories don't end that way, but it's a prime example of somebody really cares that if I jump, I won't be here anymore. And a lot of veterans and people in general, when they're thinking about suicide, don't think about that. Who are they going to leave behind? What is this? What kind of effect it is? Crisis is crisis for a reason. Crisis is, I just want to get out of this crisis any which way I can. So sometimes we have to be that thing in the middle that makes them have a second thought of the ramifications of, sure, you'll be out of pain, but what else is going to be left behind when you do? Okay. Problem-solving skills. Do they have problem-solving skills? Do they have a lack of problem-solving skills? If so, we need to help them with that. Problem-solving skills also is something that I talk to a lot of veterans about because that's something that it can be learned over time. And sometimes people are not in crisis. I always tell them, think of it as this. This is what your racehorse looks like when it's in the races. It has blinders on. It's only seeing one goal. Sometimes when you have somebody with problem solving issues, they have to be able to pull those blinders back and see a little bit more than just the periphery of what's going on. Okay. Sense of spirituality. That's a big one. Do they have a belief? A lot of people, we talk about the fact that having some belief, even feeling that they're going to displease God, is a big protective factor. Okay. Mission or purpose, having a sense of purpose. We all know that. In social work and in psychology, we learn about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of those needs is feeling like you have accomplished something in your lifetime. So making sure that people are connected, and that goes back to connectedness, feeling like you have some type of purpose. Even when you come out of the service, connecting them with volunteering, connecting them with something that's going to make them feel like they have a sense of purpose, because that was their purpose. If you think about it, especially if they were in for a very long time, that was their purpose. Now we've got to shift gears and create a new purpose. Physical health, a big one, right? We all know that when we exercise and we eat right, we feel good mentally and physically. So physical health also plays a big part, getting them connected with healthcare that's needed. A lot of veterans, I know that I've encountered, especially on the crisis line, dental, making sure they're connected with their doctors, getting results. Those were big issues, and feeling like they're making some progress in their healthcare. Okay. Employment, again, that goes back to mission and purpose, feeling like you have a sense of something. And social and emotional well-being, again, you could connect all of those, feeling like you're connected to somebody, feeling good about yourself, and just having your mental and your physical health taken care of. All right, ready for the next slide. Okay, so just a few facts. The rate of suicide was 2.2 times higher among female veterans compared to non-veterans, and it was 1.3 higher among male veterans. So I'm going to break those two slides down. I like simplicity. If the statistics actually show that women attempt more than men, but men actually complete more. So what does that mean? Women actually do more of attempting suicide, but men actually complete. Why? What's the difference? Okay, let me go through these two and then I'll talk about this. So male veterans aged 18 to 34 experience a higher rate of suicide, but okay, so rate versus count. So 55 and older completed, 18 to 34 had a higher attempt rate. Okay, so let me go back to my first point. What is the difference? The means. Women may use pills, poisons, things they'll be discovered and found. Men will use more lethal means such as guns, hangings, knives, things that will complete. Most men, if you talk to them, veteran or non-veteran, they don't want to be in pain, or they don't want to come to a place where they'll be on a respirator, feeding tube, be dependent. So they're more likely to use more lethal means to get the job done, so to speak, versus a woman who may want to be rescued and found. Now, when we flip over to the next slide, you're going to see that women, veterans, tend to use firearms as well, and that is statistically growing. But prior to that, the means was more like pills, poisons, things that where they're going to be found. Okay. So it says at the bottom, 69% of all veteran suicide deaths resulted from a firearm injury. So again, we talked about firearms being the most successful. Okay, ready for the next slide. Please, sir. Okay, so this just shows the trends from 2005 to 2017. And of course, we can see an increase. And okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide because I know my time is coming up. So it just shows that there was a general increase. Okay, so again, this is breaking it down by age, and you can see the absolute number of suicides was highest among your 55 to 74, but the rates, the more attempts, are 18 to 34. Okay, so if you think about, and I'm gonna just briefly touch on this, and then we're gonna move on. 55 to 74. I wish I could do a dialogue, but what do you think is happening between 55 and 74? You're aging, right? Loss of independence, bodily changes, physical changes. So, and depression. Higher there among the elderly, there's a higher degree of depression because somebody said loss of friends, right? So a lot of death. Loss of friends could be from just natural aging and death and dying. So when you look at that group, you have to look at that group in terms of depression, connectivity. Do they have a support system? Are they living in an assisted living facility versus independence? All of those factors all of those things, whether you're a veteran or a non-veteran, do contribute to factors of life, quality of life issues. Okay, all right, ready for the next slide. Okay, so this is the meat and potatoes, or part of it anyway. So this talks a little bit, as you can see pictorially, what I was referring to. So if you look at female veterans versus male veterans, the dark blue is firearm injury. As you can see, male veterans, 70.7% use firearms as a means of suicide, and female veterans is 43.2. So again, as I said, that's growing. Now more female veterans are, because they have access to guns. But prior to that, if you look at the shading in light blue where it says poisoning, look at the difference. Women, 28.7, men, 8.9. So again, they're more likely to use, and then the lighter shade, it says suffocation. So suffocation could mean not just hanging or putting something over your head. It could mean you close the garage door and turn on the car. Okay. So any means of, and that's in a way it's sort of passive, right? Because I don't have to do anything. I let it take its course. So again, the more aggressive means are going to be more likely your men. The more passive means more likely your females. Okay, next slide, sir. Okay, so again, this just breaks it down a little bit more for you for non-veterans versus veterans. And again, you're going to see the same thing here. Male veterans versus non-male veterans, higher. If you look in the first column for firearms, they're more likely because why? Veterans are naturally trained to use firearms. So again, it just breaks it down. And as you can see, it tends to be higher in your non-veterans, or poisoning is higher with your non-veterans. Where it says percentage of non-veteran adults suicidal deaths. Okay, poisoning. So you have male versus female. So they're going to use, males will use less. Again, females use more. So in your more passive or quote unquote passive means of suicide, you have your females, and you're more aggressive, you're going to find males. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. That's just breaking it down a little bit more. Okay, so this goes back to what I was talking about. This is briefly going to go through this slide. So as you see, the length of time between, you can put when they're thinking about it and they're actually attempting it, the more time you can put, the less chance you're going to have to attempt. So as you see, as the time increases, the chance of the attempt decreases. Okay, if that makes sense. So the more time you can put between somebody thinking and wanting to harm themselves and their access to the means, the more likely you're going to have a non-attempt. All right, ready for the next slide, sir. And that's all under an hour. Okay, suicide is preventable. Okay, next slide. How is it preventable? Okay, we're going to talk about a few myths. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so this is a myth versus reality. You guys, you're going to get the answer, but before I do go flip to the answer, people who talk about suicide are just seeking attention. True or false? And I want you to think, is it true or false? Okay, ready for the next slide. Okay, so the reality is no matter how casually or jokingly said, suicide threat should never be ignored and may indicate serious suicidal feelings. Someone who talks about suicide provides other opportunity to intervene before suicidal behavior occurs. So just because somebody jokingly says it, it doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it, okay? You have lots of people in life that say, I just wish I were dead. So when they say things like that, our job, and at least our job as clinicians, is to go take a step further and ask more questions to find out, are they just having depression or do they have means? Once they start talking about means, then you know that they're actually thinking about harming themselves. Okay, sometimes people go through depressive. Teenagers say that, I just wish I were dead. They get acne, I just wish I were dead. Okay, so it depends on the situation, depends on the circumstance and what you're looking at. Okay, all right, ready for the next one. Okay, the only one who can really help someone who is suicidal is a mental health counselor or therapist. Well, myth or true or false, right? It's totally false. Not only a mental health counselor, but okay, let's go to the answer, please, sir. Next slide. Special training is not required to safely raise the subject of suicide. Helping someone feel included, showing genuine, heartfelt support can make a huge difference during a challenging time. So even during the pandemic, just showing a little bit of care goes a long way. Okay, just listening. Sometimes if all the skill you have is listening, sometimes that's all people need is somebody to listen and feel like somebody understood. Okay. All right, next slide, please, sir. Watching my time. Okay, so there are other myths that weren't included here, but we're going to talk briefly about SAVE, or SAVE, and what that means, because this is a presentation we generally do with the community. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so SAVE. We're going to talk about your signs. Ask, what's the question that we ask? Validation, which goes along with just listening and being supportive. And E, encourage, treat, and expedite getting help. Okay, so we're ready for the next slide. Okay, so what are our signs of suicidal thinking? Hopelessness, feeling there's no way out, and maybe you can identify with some of these. Anxiety, agitation, sleeplessness, or mood swings. Feeling there's no reason to live. Rage or anger, engaging in risky activities without thinking, increasing alcohol or drug abuse, withdrawing from family or friends. So those are all signs of suicidal thinking. I always tell my veterans, if I put my hand over that list and you read it to me, that sounds like depression, right? All of those are signs of depression. However, the next slide is going to help us to break it down a little further as to why it's risk. So I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, now you're at risk when you combine those with thinking about hurting or killing yourself, looking for ways to die, talking about death, dying, or suicide, or self-destructive or risk-taking behavior, especially when it involves alcohol, drugs, or weapons. Okay, so as you can see, one is just thinking, that we call that ideation, but this is intent. So I always tell veterans, think of intent as a legal term, right? When they say that they catch you for intent means you've gathered the means and you had a plan. So you can have the suicidal ideation or the thinking, and it could just be depression, right? But when you come to the intent, I've gathered the means and I have a plan to execute. That's when it becomes risk. Okay, so suicidal ideation plus suicidal intent equals risk, if you liked algebra or equations. Okay, ready for the next slide. Okay, so what questions do we ask, or what questions can you ask? Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. So this is your A of the SAVE. This is how you save. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Point blank. Okay, that seems very blunt to a lot of people. However, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the other questions that we have, are you thinking about harming yourself? Is another question that we ask, not just how you think about, have you had any thoughts of harming yourself? So do ask the question, you've identified warning signs or symptoms. Do ask the question is natural and flows with your conversation. Don't ask the question as though you're looking for a no answer, such as, you're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? That does not work. And don't wait to ask questions until he or she is halfway out the door. Why is that? Because by the time you're done and they're heading out the door, they're not going to turn around to answer your question. They've already been through a whole session with you. They're tired, they're exhausted. So asking that question, oh, by the way, wait 1 minute. And it also may lead to a whole nother conversation, which needs to be addressed. So we want to make sure that we address it in the beginning or the middle, so you have enough time. Going back to the top don't, a lot of people, a lot of veterans I've asked that to, I said, how does that sound to you? They said, it sounds judgmental. You aren't thinking of killing yourself. It's almost, what they hear is, You have nothing to die for. So why are you thinking about killing yourself? At this point, I always teach people pain is subjective, right? My pain may not be yours, but if it's real to you, it's real. So you don't always ask open-ended questions and not closed-ended questions where you're going to get a yes, no answer, because that's exactly what you get. Yes, no, and you get no information. Okay? So also what I explain to people is asking, do you want to harm yourself or kill yourself? What's the difference? Harm or kill? It depends on where the person is at. I always tell people when I was in hospice, if I said to somebody thinking about killing themselves, you thinking about killing yourself? Well, no, because they're already dying, right? But if I say you think about harming yourself, well, yeah. What's the difference? It depends on the framework of what that person is in. Okay. All right, ready for the next slide. Okay, so you don't have to answer these questions, but here is your check-in. What are your thoughts about asking that question? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you uncomfortable? Does it bother you? So those are things that you have to think about. What initial concerns do you have? Do you think if you ask that question, it's going to make them actually commit suicide? That's a big one. They think if I ask them, I'm just going to put the thought in their head and they're going to go ahead and do it. No, if you ask the question and it comes out, it's because it's already there. It's nothing that you did. Okay. Okay, so we're going to skip the last two bullets. That's if we were in person. So, but think about that. Again, it goes back to your mortality. So V, here is your V. Talk openly about suicide. Be willing to listen and allow the veteran to express his or her feelings. Recognize the situation is serious. Don't pass judgment, but reassure them that help is available. See, that's all validation. Validation is really a therapy term. Validation is you just make the person feel comfortable in their own space. We don't judge what they say. We just reassure them it's going to be okay, or reassure them that there's ways to help if they're feeling a certain way. So that's basically your validation. Okay, next slide. Okay. Okay, so we're going to skip that slide. That's just ways to talk about how to validate. Okay, so let's talk about your E. Encourage from and expedite getting help. What should you do if you think somebody's suicidal? Number one is don't keep their behavior a secret. I always get veterans to laugh when I say this. You're not a snitch. Tell somebody, okay? Because you might save a life. Okay? Don't leave him or her alone. That's a big thing with the crisis line. If they get somebody on the line who's suicidal, they'll call the police or somebody who do a welfare check, but they will not take that person off the line. And there's a slide I'm going to show you what to do if you're on the phone and you're talking to somebody who's suicidal. Try to get the person to seek immediate help from his or her doctor, nearest hospital emergency room, call 911, reassure them. Again, like we just talked about, part of validation is reassure them help is available. Sometimes people just need to know that you're okay. This is normal. What you've been through, this is normal, okay? And then call the crisis line again. I always tell people if you have no other tools in your toolbox, the crisis line is your number one tool. Okay? All right, ready for the next slide. All right, when talking to a veteran at risk for suicide, here are some things you can do with you, okay? Remain calm, listen more than you speak. It's okay, you don't have to have all the answers. Maintain eye contact, act with confidence. So what does that mean? Just have a nice neutral look on your face. Don't, oh my gosh, because a lot of veterans, what I call scare. Like if you do that, and if you show shock, then a lot of them are already uncomfortable, already feeling ashamed and embarrassed. So we just keep a neutral look when we're dealing with that. Don't argue. You can't argue somebody out of suicide. And I'll go back to that in a minute. Use open body language. Limit questions and let the veteran do the talking. Use supportive and encouraging comments. Be honest. Let the veteran know there are no quick solutions, but help is available. So going back to do not argue. I always say suicide is not rational. Okay, so if I can go into a court of law and I can present my case to you why you shouldn't do this, then you're thinking in a rational mode. It's not. I always go back to this, my example, blinders on. If I'm in crisis, my goal is to hit my one goal. So I'm not thinking about all the other possible solutions at that point. I'm just in crisis. So that's why you can't argue and say, you have so much to live for. Why don't you think you have something to live for? It won't resonate at that moment, because if you think about it, when you're in crisis, even naturally, if your body's in crisis, what happens? You shut down. Everything constricts, your whole body constricts, adrenaline starts running, and you're trying to complete your mission. So trying to argue somebody out of it is better to reassure than to argue, because they won't hear it at that point. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, so, okay, I'm gonna skip that. That's a practice session that we do with people. Can you skip that? All right, we can skip that session. Skip that as well, please, sir. This is stuff that I've done with nurses and things of that nature. Okay, so your save is, we're looking for signs, asking the most important question. V, you want to validate. E, encourage treatment and expedite getting help. So that's what acronym SAVE means. S, look for your signs. A, ask. V, validate. E, encourage and expedite. Okay, next slide. I think I might be coming to the end. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. These are all part of your practice sessions. Okay, next slide. I told him I was going to include them. Okay, next slide. Okay. So we're going to talk briefly about resources and references. You can go to the next slide. I'm just going to quickly go through these because we're almost there with my presentation. Okay. Go through the next slide. So basically, we're just, so these are ways you can access SAVE training if you want more information on SAVE. Okay. So the next slide. Okay. So again, this is all information on how you can get more information on training yourself, training your organization. So you can go to the next slide. I'm actually going to go to 40 when we get through to 48. And then that'll probably be my last. Okay, so the next slide. Oh, okay, so this is important. Who should take the SAVE training, the one I've just talked about today, or download that information? Your first responders, crisis line volunteers, law enforcement, members of the clergy, individuals working in the justice system, healthcare employees, faith leaders, community members, basically everybody and anybody. Okay, and that's who we do work with. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the slide I wanted to get to. So what do you, because this has been asked, we do a training sometimes with nurses at Emory, and this is a question. What do you do if a veteran expresses suicidal ideation during a phone call? Keep the caller on the line, do not hang up, don't transfer. If you hang up or transfer, that might have been your one opportunity to help that veteran, okay? You wanna remain calm. Don't sound like you're panicking, even if you are. Take a deep breath. They can't see you. They don't know your facial expressions, but just keep calm, okay? Obtain identifying information on the caller, such as what's listed, name, phone number, location. Also, if you're not sure, also listen to sounds that might be going on. The veteran may be homeless. Sometimes the police can ping their number if they won't tell you where they are, so they can find them and do a welfare check. Conference call to the VCL, I'm sorry, Veterans Crisis Line. Sometimes what we do is we'll be on a call and we will Skype or Teams on another team member and have them call while we stay on the line and focus on the veteran. So that's what the next one says. Solicit a coworker to help. If the caller disconnects, call 911, call the crisis line and report so that somebody can continue to follow up with that veteran, okay? Oftentimes you will see on the crisis line that if they disconnect, the crisis line caller will go to the supervisor and get information as to what to do next, and they'll keep trying to call. Or again, the police have a way to ping the number so they can locate the veteran and go do a welfare check. A lot of veterans get scared, especially when you do a welfare check. They think that the police are coming for them. So what I try to explain to them, it's a welfare check. They're not coming to arrest you. They're coming to help you and or get you to a hospital or somewhere where you can be seen. Okay, so that's the purpose of calling the police, is not to put them in jail, but to help them to get connected. Okay, all right, next slide. I think we're almost there. Okay, so this is the crisis line. We talked a little bit about this. It's for everyone. You just press 1 at the prompt if you're a veteran. Okay, next slide. So this is just a little bit about the crisis line. We get lots of calls. And again, crisis to some veterans is not just suicidal thinking. We've gotten veterans that are homeless, can't connect with resources. So crisis could mean different things to different people. It just depends on the veteran and what their situation is. And we do, if that's the case, we do so the crisis line is a national call. The call then goes to wherever the veteran lives. So if they live in Atlanta or the surrounding areas, we have Dublin. We also have Savannah. So you have different places. So wherever the veteran lives, they're going to get the second touch from the local staff, just so that you know how that works. Okay, so they get one national call, then a local call to follow up. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so that's our tag, be there, for our veterans. Okay, next slide. This is all probably just resources and information that we throw in there. Okay, so this is another resource that we give to veterans. Okay, next slide.
My name is Ryan, and
Oh.
I was in the Army for 12 years.
You
After
don't
I
have to play
got
that.
out of the military, after I left for
Yeah, you don't have to play that. Okay, so coaching to care, that's another resource that we give our veterans, so that they can have that. So these are all things that the crisis line can provide, or we provide when we give them a call. So the next slide, and they're in these slides as well. I don't want to take up all this time. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. I think we're coming to the end. Okay, next slide. So this is all the information that you can get to help you with your organizations. Next slide. Next slide. And I think that's it. I think we're there. All right. That's my presentation. I know there are quite a few things that came up in the chat, but.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And I hope that information was helpful.
Okay, let me just kind of browse the chat
Okay.
to see if there's something in here. Actually, I got quite a few questions in here.
While David is browsing the chat, I can share this information with you. For the SAVE and the acronyms of what SAVE mean and what not to do when someone call you who has witnessed a suicide and possibly suicidal themselves, trust me, recently, about a month ago, and I get emotional every time I talk about this, the young lady was going to be on the call today, but she chose not to come because she's still emotional about this. But long story short, I took ownership of it. I called the crisis line. They put me on hold for about 10 minutes. And I realized that, I need to get in touch. I need to get the veteran back on the call because she was also a veteran. I need to get the veteran back on the call. And once I got her on the call, I waited about another 10 minutes for the crisis representative. So at that time, I am a veteran myself. I do suffer from PTSD. So that was a trigger for me. And I did not realize it. And I was not calm. I was frustrated. I took ownership of this now. So I asked the representative first, why did it take you so long to get back with me? Okay, and then she went through the little spiel, and I'm sure she was reading a script, and that frustrated me. So after a few minutes, she asked the young lady, are you suicidal? The young lady said, yes. The representative was so impersonable, and she was still reading off her script. And of course, I'm frustrated. So I said, wait a minute. She just admitted that she's suicidal. So what are you going to do about it? And my tone wasn't like this. Like I said, I was a little frustrated. I was not calm because it was a sense of urgency for me. And I don't even know this young lady. She's about an hour from where I live, and I couldn't get to her in time, but my wheels were just turning. So myself and the representative said to me, well, this is not my only call. The young lady hung up. So I said to the representative, okay, two things. Her name, I gave the representative her name, her phone number, her address. And I said, I think the first question you should have asked her, and I'm not an expert, but I said, it's just common sense to me that you would have wanted to know, are you home alone? What is your phone number? What is your address? It took you too long. Then I hung up. I tried to call the young lady back. So once I got in touch with the young lady, and it took me a while, I had time to call 911. I called 911. The operator asked me the name, the phone number, and if the young lady's at home by herself. And she said, okay, I'm dispatching someone to get to her. By that time, I had called the young lady back and said, I got help on the way. Because she witnessed her fiance 2 days earlier. He shot himself in the bathroom and she was trying to get him help. He shot himself in the bathroom, and she said she was trying to stay awake all night, but she fell asleep, and he shot himself while she fell asleep. I didn't know her and I didn't know him. But this is what drives me right here. We have to bring about awareness, let veterans know there are resources, get them connected, whether it's, VA, American Gratitude programs, Wounded Warrior program, and even within the community. Because I know when veterans connect with other veterans, they don't feel so alone. They have a sense of pride, that pride that we had and that pride that we shared working together alongside one another, accomplishing something. We felt it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about having a title. It was, for most of us, it was about we accomplished something. We did good for somebody. We did good for this country. Now it's time for us to do good and stand by veterans and support them. And, you have all kinds of people in this world. You can't worry about, well, maybe they're not doing the right thing. Don't worry about that. Just reach out and help somebody. And reach out and help your veteran, your buddy, who may not be showing any signs of symptom of suicidal, because we don't know who's suicidal. It could be me and you don't know that. I'm not saying I am. So to the social worker, don't send anybody to my house right now. So let's reach out and help somebody. Veterans, they may feel lonely. Let them know they are not alone and they are not forgotten. There is help. There is some help out there everywhere. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Ms. Lamb, I think I've got a couple. First one, someone asked a question. What are some questions to ask someone if they mention suicide to differ between depression and means? I'm not sure if that's a clear enough question, but.
Okay. So I think what they're trying to say is, how do you differentiate if they're actually at risk or if it's just depression?
Correct.
So directly ask them, do you have access? So not only do you ask them, are you thinking about harming yourself, but do you have access to means? Do you plan to use those means? So that's how you differentiate between somebody that's just saying, I just feel depressed, I just want to die, versus are you serious about harming yourself? So that's the difference, is do they have access to the means? Are you thinking about using those means? Because a lot of them will say, I have pills. They'll tell you, I have pills at home and I'm going to take my prescription pills, or I have a gun at home. So then my next question will you be willing to have somebody take the gun? Would you or have them take the bullets? And if they're not, then I know that they're really at risk and that they're really in pain. So the difference is we actually have screenings, Columbia screenings and different screenings to find out if it's suicidal. And then if they answer certain questions, it will prompt us to go ahead and do a risk assessment. And in the risk assessment, we find out, okay, do you have a plan? And that's how we know if it's just depression or something. I know I'm lengthy, aren't I? I talk a lot. Sorry.
No, but just to take that a little step farther, even though you do the risk assessment, and I'm going to take it a step farther because I believe in and the what if. So what if they answer those questions and they don't fit that category of being suicidal, but they call you to let you know that I'm thinking about committing suicide. Sometimes veterans just don't feel like going through the process of talking and sharing the details of, let's get this done and over with, bottom line. Okay, so at what point, not you, but at what point do we intervene and say, okay, we need to get this person help right now and let them know help is on the way. Let me connect you. In the meantime, let me connect you with this resource.
Right. So that's when we'll do a welfare check. If it's iffy, like we feel like they're omitting, you get a gut feeling they're omitting something. Yeah, at that point we'll do a welfare check. The police then come and check, and if they are ready or if they will take them to a hospital. We also ask them, would you like us to put in a mental health consult? Do you feel safe? Do you need help to get to the VA? Can we assist you to get to the VA? So we do take it a step further when we think that there might be more risk to it than that. Yeah, we don't just, I know I'm giving you a snippet in time, but yeah, if we do get a gut feeling, we take it a step further.
So what if veterans show up at the VA hospital? VA say, okay, we don't have any room for you, and they turn the veteran away. The veteran go back the next day and commit suicide.
Okay.
How do we prevent that? Because that has happened so many times.
Really? Okay. So, well, so let's do two scenarios. One is they show up. Generally, if they're saying that they're suicidal, they do get assessed in the ER. Okay, whether they go to our 4th floor, which is our psych unit, and stay, is if there is no room, they get sent to an outside facility. So that is taken seriously. And we've done so much education at this point that they know that they need to take that seriously. Scenario 2, what if they don't take it seriously and they leave and they commit suicide? There's a very extensive investigation that is done where they will review the record and they will go to the various providers to find out what happened and why did this happen and why did this occur. It won't bring the veteran back, and it certainly won't give the family peace, maybe, but it will definitely make that providers be aware that this should not occur again, or if it does occur, these are the consequences that's going to happen with you during the investigation. So yeah, and it's not a happy process. They drill that chart. It's not a happy process. So
thank you.
Okay, here's another one for you. When you give this presentation and have the audience participate, have you ever had someone emotionally break down during the practice part? If so, how was it handled?
Okay, so I've never really had, if they do, I've had one person express that they had a family member that committed suicide. So at that point, what I do is either take a break and speak to that person, or generally, if it's in a group, the group is generally very good about comforting that person. If I'm in person, I've done in-person groups at the DOM, at our domiciliary, and if I have a veteran, I've had veterans that actually leave or express, I will, after the group, sit down with that one veteran and just continue to talk with them until they I feel a sense of peace that it's going to be okay. And after the connection, I then contact their provider and say, we sat down, we had this conversation, you may want to continue to check on that veteran. But in a group setting, either I take that person and talk to them afterwards, or the group is generally really good about sharing their experiences and being very validating of that person. So that's what has happened to me before. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I see Alana Phelps has her hand up.
And she came on camera too.
Is something you want to add on this particular question, or something totally different?
I have a question regarding calling 911 with the recent events that have happened amongst African Americans with mental health issues, and the police were called and they were killed. I myself am a mental health sufferer. Is there anything else we could do for people like that versus calling 911? Thank you.
Okay. So a lot of people have expressed that they're not comfortable with the police being called. So at that point, we'll review the chart if there is family members. So a lot of these vets have family members. I know that with HIPAA, can be tricky because we can't, if they don't give us permission, but in a crisis situation, most of the times they'll have an emergency contact. We'll reach out. I personally have done this. I'll reach out to family and friends and say, hey, you know, would you be willing to, sometimes they'll let the family member take them to the hospital versus the police. So if they express to us that they don't want the police called for various reasons, we'll continue to talk to them and say, hey, you know, it just sounds like you're really in distress. Sounds like you could really use somebody to talk to. When we get them to a point where they're somewhat stable and willing to accept help, then we'll reach out and say, hey, you know, could you give a call to your whatever? And, you know, and it'll work out that way. And that has happened. So we always try to go, especially in social work, we try to go where they are. We believe it or not, whether they have rights, veterans, everyone has rights. And also if they're capable of making their own decisions, we respect that, even in crisis. Now, if you're going to kill yourself or you're at immediate risk, we might have to take other means, but as much as possible as we can preserve your rights, we're going to do that in terms of risk, not in terms of other things. Does that make sense?
Okay, great.
Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but veterans can also call, if you do not feel comfortable calling 911 and having a police dispatch, you can ask to have EMC, the nearest hospital, and they will send out an ambulance to come and get you.
Okay.
I mean, you could call 911 yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
We like options.
Here's another one, and maybe we'll do one more after this. Is the rate higher in rural areas where services are more distant and urban areas where there is a lack of, I'm assuming they're saying mental health services?
Oh, rural versus urban. So it's interesting that they asked that question because I think I've heard, I'm not 110% sure, but I don't believe that's, so I don't know. Let me say that I don't know. I think I've heard someone say in the past that the rural areas, not necessarily because they're more connected. So in the rural areas, sometimes you have family members that are more close knit, so you have a greater support system. So I've heard that in the past, but I'll say I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to say that I know that for sure.
Okay, here's one. I think we'll close it on this one. How do we change the negative social stigma, especially in the military, that inhibits the reporting of mental health issues, to try and support these issues prior to the onset of suicidal ideations?
Okay, say that one more time because the chat came up.
I guess the question is, there's this perception in the military that you don't want anyone to know that you're suicidal because it'll probably ruin your career, take you out of a particular profession or whatever. And then how do you then handle that in light of that machismo or macho attitude that we think you can't let anyone in the military know in your leadership chain that you are having these types of thoughts?
Okay.
How do we change that stigma?
Fine. So again, education. And again, you know, our peer, I'm grateful that the VA has a peer support program, because the interesting thing is, even out of the military, when you see your friends and somebody that you know or somebody at your same level respond in a certain way, and it's okay, then you know it's okay. Let me use this example: military sexual trauma. So women were great at reporting that. Men weren't, not so much. Now men are more comfortable reporting it because the more people that have the courage to step out and say, this happened to me, the more others will step out and do it. Plus, it's not overnight, right? Because you have the different branches and the different honor systems, right? In the different branches. Let me say the Marines versus the Army. Let me just use that as a big, because that's a big one for me in group, where if you say something, you're considered a wuss, or you're out of line. So again, a lot of it is teaching them once they come out, you're no longer in that culture. Yes, you can still associate with your buddies and friends because it makes them comfortable to know that there's somebody that understands them, but making them understand that once you're out, you still have, it's a different environment now, it's a different world, and you don't have to stick to those same codes. It's a thought. let me say, anything you have to change is never easy, and change never comes overnight. So sometimes a lot of it is you have to really work with people and where their thinking is at to make them realize you're safe now. You're not under that person anymore. You can say something. But again, once you've been trained a certain way, even in life, those changes don't come overnight. It's a gradual education. It's a gradual supporting. It's a gradual of them seeing other people report and don't get in trouble, report and get help. And also, it's a lot of it is education, because I found in the homeless program, a lot of veterans don't know a lot of resources. So they don't even know they can talk to somebody and not get in trouble, or talk to somebody and get help. They don't know, seriously. And I was kind of surprised. I was like, wow, things that we think are commonplace and everyday, people really don't know. So the more you tell people, the more that you express it, and the more you say it's okay to tell somebody, even though I always say plant a seed. And that's how I've been with my veterans. Plant a seed. They may not respond to it that day, but they're going to come. But when they feel like you're genuine, they'll come back and maybe later on say, you know, Ms. Lamb, I thought about what you said, and I do want to talk to somebody now. So again, it's not today. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be overnight. But when you plant a seed and show that you care, it breaks down those barriers to make them realize that not everybody is going to come and attack you or make you feel like you're odd or you're strange. There are people out there that genuinely care and genuinely want to see you get the help that you need. So again, it's a gradual. Some folks, it's a gradual process. Some people are ready, some people are not, and you just have to go where they are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Again, we just want to say we appreciate what you've brought to the table today for us. And we would love to have you back, because we do believe this is a critical and important issue that we would always like to present to the coalition or others that may want to just have linked in with you, even offline from what we do as a part of the coalition. But before we let you completely go, what I would like to do is just share real quick with the audience something I believe that's been near and dear to a number of us here. And I would just like to leave you all with this Spartan pledge as it relates to being there for your buddies. And the Spartan pledge goes, I will not take my own life by my own hands until I talk to my battle buddy first. My mission is to find a mission to help my warfighter family. And I would just encourage you all to take heed to this particular pledge. I've posted it on a couple of sites and pages that I have, and I would just encourage you all to do the same. And you can take it from this presentation after we post it on our website. So again, I would just like to thank you and Ms. Barber for the work that you guys do as it relates to supporting veterans. So we're going to transition. And I know we've been kind of going at it for a while. So if you want to turn your video off, stand up and stretch. We're just going to keep moving, but just make sure you don't show us your PJs while you're standing. So we'll just go from there. So we would like to now transition to some work that is being done by Emory. And I just want to kind of get their slide set ready. And I would like to bring Josh forward. So Josh, if you would just kind of unmute, and while you're talking, I'll bring your slides up and we'll have you give you a presentation and tell us what it is that you guys are doing at Emory for the veterans community.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So while he's doing that, I just kind of give everybody a little information about myself. And once he gets the slides up, we just go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Joshua Moss. I'm an outreach coordinator with Emory Healthcare Veterans Program. I've been with Emory for about 3 years now. I am an Army vet. I deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan a few times, Republic of Georgia, and did a couple training missions with their soldiers over there. So doing this particular job is near and dear to my heart because I'm able to interact with other veterans, speak to other veterans, and also do my part to give back to the veteran community. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. So Emory Healthcare Veterans Program is pretty much is started or was started by a wounded warrior. There's 3 other programs like ours, one in California, one in Chicago, and another in Pennsylvania. So we all kind of do the same thing. We have some similarities and some differences, but we mostly focus on veterans that are suffering with PTSD, military sexual trauma, TBI, depression, anxiety, things of that nature. So as many of you know, when soldiers come back from war zones and whatnot, we all see the obvious wounds of war, but what we don't see is the invisible wounds of war, and that could be that mental health and PTSD. So we're here to help veterans with that and get back to their better way of life, or the way of life that they choose to be. Next slide, please. All right, so this is just a little data. Since 9/11, approximately 5 million Americans have served in the armed forces. More than 2 million Americans are currently serving. Out of those 2 million, 1 million will develop PTSD, and 600,000 will suffer from traumatic brain injury. Next slide. Also, the role or the toll that PTSD can take on veterans. As you can see, it can affect risky behavior, substance abuse, unemployment, higher rates of divorce. I could speak for myself personally. When I came back from Iraq, I did a lot of different risky behaviors. I bought a motorcycle, and I was going up and down I-75 at rates of speed I probably shouldn't have been going, but I felt invincible. I felt like if I made it back from Iraq and Afghanistan, I should be all right over here in the States. So just a lot of risky behaviors. Also, PTSD and TBI attributes to a high rate of military suicide. So that goes along with the presenter that was before me. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. All right, so this again is some more data. So out of all of the wars, the total amount of wars or years that we've been fighting the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, you can see the casualty rate, but then you also see the total suicide rate since 9/11 with our service members. And as you see, it outweighs the actual casualty rates in our global war on terror. So as you can realize, suicide is a big priority in our communities, veteran community, and our regular civilian communities. So we definitely have to address this issue and do what we can to address these issues and help our battle buddies. Next slide, please. All right, so barriers to treatment. So PTSD is a disorder of avoidance. I can kind of relate to this as well. Just soldiers and veterans, when they come back, they're not necessarily trying to go get help for various reasons. You don't want to be frowned upon or labeled as that crazy guy or the guy that got PTSD, he might snap. So a lot of veterans don't come out on their own. Sometimes it takes other battle buddies, family members, friends to kind of get them or encourage them to go get help. Some other barriers are few resources in rural areas, depending on what state or city that you're in. There might not be a VA hospital close by or mental health services close by. So a lot of times veterans have to drive to the next major city to get help, or go to a whole nother state sometimes, depending on what state they're in. Like I said, the negative stigma towards mental health, of course, we don't want to be labeled as that or having PTSD. Active duty service members there, might have fear of losing their position, or it might be grounds for being kicked out of the military. So a lot of times, those are a lot of issues or reasons why some veterans and service members might not come forward to get help with their PTSD. Next slide, please. All right, so how do Emory help, and how do we address these barriers? So what we do, we have an evidence-based holistic care with high success rate. 75% see clinical significant reductions in symptoms, suicidal ideations, PTSD symptoms, things of that nature. We do that by enhanced case management that builds continuity and trust with our veterans. So once our veteran comes to our program, our clinicians and our therapists, they all work together to better help this veteran. Once the veteran tells their story, they don't have to tell the story multiple times. We all kind of work together. And so everybody's on the same page, and we kind of try to, relate to them as far as, when they first come in and they might meet me, or they might meet me at an event, just being a fellow veteran builds a little bit of trust, in listen to what I have to say. Then once they have come to the program, they trust our therapist. So we highly look upon that or try to build that trust with our veterans once they come. Like I said before, we have a 90% retention rate in our intensive outpatient program. So majority of the time, the only people that leave our program early is if something back home, unforeseen circumstances happen, or have to get back home for their kids, something of that nature. For the most part, everybody completes our program. The best thing about our program, though, it is cost-free to the veteran. What I mean by cost-free, it recovers the cost of their meals, their travel, and their lodging while they attend the program. We service all 50 states, all branches of the military, regardless of discharge status. So if it was less than dishonorable, it doesn't matter. We can treat them as long as they serve at least one day past 9/11. So if they got in 1999 or 1989 and they got out one day after 9/11 happened, they will still qualify for the program. So we try to eliminate all the barriers that would prevent a veteran from coming to the program. So I tell veterans, if you're not in the state of Georgia, as long as you can get to the airport, we got you all the rest of the way. Once a veteran flies in, we pick them up from the airport, bring them to our location. And we're not in a hospital type setting. Some veterans like, I don't want to go to no crazy house and nothing like that. It looks like a typical office building. They stay in the Marriott Hotel right across the street from our office building. One-man rooms. We don't do bed checks, things of that nature. So because of that, we ask that veterans that do come, that they're able to kind of be self-sufficient. They'll have a schedule, so they'll have to come back and go back and forth as on their own according to their schedule. So because of that, we ask that they be a little self-sufficient. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so we have two forms or two tracks of our treatment. So we have our traditional outpatient care, and what that is that's just normally a veteran coming in once a week, once a month, however it works for their schedule, and then get the services from our program. But what we try to push the most is our 2-week intensive program. So that's pretty much, like I said, when a veteran will come to our program for 2 weeks, they'll get a year's worth of therapy in those 2 weeks. That's why it's so intensive. And once they come, we give them an assessment, and then our team try to come up with a service plan for them to find out the best treat them. And I'll discuss that here in a second. Next slide, please. So these are some of the clinical services that we offer here, and I won't read them all, but you can see them on the screen. So we have trauma-focused therapy, prolonged exposure in vivo, and what some veterans might do, or they might, let's just say a veteran is not comfortable with going to a crowd or walking to a mall or going to a store. So it could be part of their treatment plan where their homework would be go to Walmart and just walk through Walmart, shop, and things of that nature. So it just varies with different veterans and depending on their treatment plan as well. We have cognitive rehabilitation therapy, chronic pain group, anger management, and relapse prevention. Next slide, please. We also give wellness services. So what we have a gym membership with the gym that's right around the corner from our building. So if a veteran's into health and wellness, like to work out, they can get a gym membership for the 2 weeks that they're there, totally cost-free to them as well. If they choose to, they can get a personal trainer that will help them with their different wellness exercises. We also have sleep training studies. So on our 4th floor, right above us, we have a sleep study floor. So if a veteran has issues with sleep, we can do a sleep study, and they can come out with a CPAP machine if they need one. So we're kind of like a one-stop shop. We also do mindfulness, yoga, nutrition education, acupuncture, and spiritual consulting. So we have kind of like a chaplain that comes through, and if any veteran wants to discuss anything as far as their spiritual stuff, they can do that as well. We also have a VA rep there. She's there to help any veteran that needs help getting their VA benefits started, maybe information about getting their claims started. She's the only one there, so she kind of fits into everybody's schedule, but she's great at what she does, and so veterans have that option as well. Next slide. Okay, so real quick, this is just a path to treatment. So you have your initial contacts. What that could be a veteran meeting me at an event, or a veteran on a webinar like this, and I kind of give them a presentation about the program, and then we establish if they're eligible for the program. And then I'll sign you up. Our program is self-referral. So you don't necessarily have to go through a clinician or your doctor to get referred for our program. You can simply just go to our website, and if you Google Emory Healthcare Veterans Program, it'll come directly to our page. You click the request appointment button at the top of the page. You fill out the form, which is just your name, email, and a phone number, and then somebody will call you within 24 and 48 hours. So once you get that initial contact done, you'll go to our comprehensive assessment. And I will be honest with everybody, I like to be transparent. This is the part that usually hangs up a lot of veterans. Reason being, this assessment usually takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. But what this assessment is doing is pretty much asking all the questions to get a good baseline of what's going on with that individual, what trauma they're dealing with, things of that nature. So that assessment can be a little long, but once they get past that part, everything is downhill. So once they get done with the assessment, what we go to is our case conference. Our case conference is when all of our clinicians, social workers, everybody on the team meets every Monday, and then they discuss the treatment plan on how we can treat the veteran. So for instance, they'll say, hey, we have Mr. Moss here. This is what's going on with him. This is his trauma. And then they right then and there, they start discussing your treatment plan. And that goes into the next box. So everybody's treatment plan is going to be different. We're not a cookie cutter program. So what they do for me is not going to be the same as what they do for you. So then once you get into the program, like I said, you're here for 2 weeks, and then you have post-treatment. And what that is, pretty much once a veteran leaves the program, we follow up with them 3, 6, and 12 months after they leave the program. So once they leave, we just don't throw them back out, or not throw them, but let them go back home and never follow back up with them and check on. We actually do that 3, 6, and 12 months after they leave the program, just to make sure that they're maintaining their gains. Also, our caseworkers, they give each veteran a discharge packet. And in that discharge packet is a list of resources in their prospective communities or wherever they're residing, of places they can go for follow-on care. So it could be another mental health facility, counseling services, things of that nature within their community. So it's imperative, or part of my job, that I do link up with other organizations that might be out here that provide help for veterans, so that, that I can pass that on to our caseworkers, and we can add that to our resource list. I work with all kind of organizations. I seen there's a couple people that's representing the veteran courts. I actually work very well with the veteran court in Macon. So if anybody wants to, link up later on, please, I'll put my email and everything in the chat again, and we can definitely connect. Next slide, please. All right, these are just some key outcomes. Again, we have a 90% completion rate, 96% satisfactory rate, and I do believe those numbers are slightly skewed. I think they're actually up now. So like I said, pretty much everybody that comes through the program enjoys the program. They leave the program better than which they came. I have often ran into veterans, when they first come on day one, they're not smiling, they're not joking, they're not, they just serious. By that end of the 2 weeks, they're like, hey, Mr. Moss, I'm glad it came, or whoop, whoop, night and day difference. So it's definitely a beneficial program to our veterans. Over 75% of our patients achieve medical significant improvements in the 2 weeks, and they're able to maintain those gains after they leave the program. Next slide, please. Real quick, and this is my information. So my email and my phone number, I'm accessible at any time. I do it all. You can text me if you don't like calling. I tell the veterans, or any veteran as well, I do it all. If you would like me to do this presentation for a group of your veterans, a family member group, church, organization, anybody that has a veteran population, I'm more than willing to do this. I either come to your location. Our company is starting to let us travel more now, so I could definitely travel to you if you're in the state of Georgia. Hopefully we'll be able to start going to the other states here shortly. But if not, I could definitely do a Zoom as well. If anybody else want to connect with me, again, just email me or call me, and I'd love to connect and discuss this as well. Pending any questions, that's the end of my presentation. And I guess I'm looking in the chat as well. Is there a wait list? As of right now, there's not a wait list. So really it's just depending on how fast a veteran can complete the assessment and what their schedule's like. So we try to work around the veteran schedule. So for instance, if a veteran signed up today and they say, well, look, I can't come until August, that's perfectly fine. They'll be, we'll put them in, and then when August come around, we'll just schedule them for August, whenever they think they can come. And then they'll, once August comes, they'll our caseworkers send them the itineraries for his flights and things of that nature, and we can get them here. We're actually located in Atlanta, right off of North Druid Hill. That's where our building is. I'm just looking to settle the questions that I see. I think. Oh, somebody asked if you could put up the last slide one more time. And I'll put my information here. I'll type it in here in a second too as well. I think that's all I see. Yeah, so.
Are you looking for a question? I have something to say. Mr. Moss, that was actually a wonderful presentation, as well as Shelley Lamb's presentation. So we all know that veterans suffers from PTSD and TBI, other mental and physical type injuries, which leads to drug abuse and alcohol abuse. So before a veteran can enter into your program, do they need to go to a detox type facility treatment program? And do you, Emory, assist with that?
Yeah, so pretty much what happens during that assessment, that's when that assessment or that determination is made. If they are very, on substance abuse or abusing substance abuse heavily, yes, we do ask that they go to a substance abuse treatment program before they attend the program. We have one that recently that's actually going to be coming to visit our office here shortly. Twin Lakes Recovery Center, they're a substance abuse program. So I often sometimes refer veterans to that program. And if there's any other ones out there, I would love to know about it. But yes, we do ask that they be, got treatment or receive treatment for their substance abuse first.
Okay, thank you.
Is this program open to any non-post? So unfortunately, yeah, we have to, because we're funded by Wounded Warrior, we have to target post 9/11 veterans. However, our sister program in Chicago, they at Rutgers College, they actually do accept pre 9/11 veterans. So if you want the same, and they kind of do the same exact thing that we do, they're cost free as well. I refer a lot of the pre 9/11 veterans to that program. And again, they pay for everything or it's cost free for that program as well.
Before you ask the next question in the chat, I believe we have Ms. Wright has her hand up.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Greetings. Can a family member sign a veteran up?
Yeah. Like for instance, if my mom thought this program was good for me, she could sign me up. Because like I said, it's self-referral. You can just go to the website and sign them up. I would just recommend that you probably might want to tell them first, because like I said, one of our representatives will call them within 24 hours or 24 and 48 hours. So you can just give them a heads up like, hey, somebody could be calling you from Emory. So.
Yeah, I'm certain that he's ready. I've been working with the Marine now over a year, and even with COVID and his mother. And he is in a program, but he needs to be in an intensive program. He's really crying out for help.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, and if you want to talk to me offline or whatnot, just
I'll call you.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get them signed up. Again, like I said, we treat everybody. So we had a couple of people come from California. We actually had 2 airmen come from Alaska. So we can reach all over. So definitely, if you all have any veterans or know any veterans that can use some help, or if they just want to talk about it, I'm kind of the untraditional guy on the team. So I meet veterans at the bars, at the tattoo parlors, wherever veterans hang out at. That's what I do. I try to meet people where they're at. So, if any veteran, don't feel comfortable maybe talking on Zoom, you just let me know where they hang out at. And, I'll come and talk to them. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, he's hanging out at Old Dark 100 every morning and waiting for someone to chat with him. So I definitely need to connect with you. I'm with AMVAT, but I'll connect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. I look forward to it. Thank you. Anybody else? The DD-214. Yeah, so our caseworkers can help with that. So if they're not able to get it on their own, our caseworkers are able to kind of point them in the right direction or assist them with getting their DD-214s. Yeah.
think that kind of pretty much covers the vast majority of it, Josh.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like I said, if you all have any other further questions, I don't want to take up too much time. Just definitely call me. I'm gonna put my information in here again in a second. So again, thank you all for letting me present, and it was an honor. And I look forward to discussing anything or connecting with many of you in the near future.
Okay, we appreciate you coming out and helping with this. I'm gonna share a slide with the group. I'm not sure if we had asked to get a representative on board from the Wounded Warrior Project. I'm not sure if anyone's on or not. But if not, what we've done is built into our slide presentation. When you eventually go back to our website and take a look at the slide, that link at the bottom will take you to the Wounded Warriors Project website. And from there, you can also get quite a bit of information with regards to the different things that they do to support veterans in lots of different respects as well. And this is our final presentation, and it's probably about a 15-minute run or so. I'm gonna spin this one up and then just let it play. The representative wasn't able to actually be here with us, but we've got it queued up such that I believe everyone will be able to take away from it some good advice, some good ideas with regards to things that you could do also in your communities to help veterans as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Marenko with Gratitude America.
It may be a little low,
Appreciate being
so you may
invited
have
be
to
part of this
turn the volume up
presentation.
on your end as
Unfortunately,
well.
all of our staff were at a training this afternoon that was scheduled months ago, and so none of us could be live. And instead of just sending a flyer or some PowerPoint slides, I thought it'd be a little bit more personal if I could go through the slides with you, even though it's not live. So with that in mind, please feel free to email me any questions that you might have about any of this, or if there's something I didn't explain clearly enough, or whatever it might be, feel free to reach out to me. I'm also going to be speaking a little bit quickly and not going into a whole lot of detail. I've been asked to stick to around 10 minutes, and I want to be respectful of that. So we'll get started. So Gratitude America, we are a small nonprofit. Our home base is in North Florida in Fernandina Beach, but we operate programs in both the state of Georgia and Florida, and we serve post 9/11 combat veterans. And to further define that, our programs serve those who have deployed at any point in their service, as long as they also were still in service in any capacity after September of 2001, but they could have deployed prior to that. So there's my contact information. As I said, please feel free to email or call me with any questions or follow-ups. So Gratitude America has two programs, and I'm going to go into detail about each of these. One is our military support retreat program. That program is open for the military person to attend along with their primary support person. How we define primary support person for that veteran is pretty loose. The person must be an adult, and all that we ask for is that they are someone that the veteran considers as a support for them. Most often it looks like a spouse or a partner, but oftentimes it's a close friend or an adult sibling. As long as they are an adult and they're someone that the veteran feels is a support for them, we are all good with that. So the military support retreat, the veteran attends along with their support person. Warrior Path, which PATH stands for Progressive and Alternative Training for Healing Heroes. That program has the same eligibility criteria and is only open for the military member to attend. And I'll go into more details about both of these programs here in just a minute. So both of our programs have a focus on post-traumatic growth, and I'm going to show a short video clip here, which is Josh Goldberg, who's one of the co-founders of the Warrior Path program. He is much more eloquent in his explanation of post-traumatic growth, which is why I will let him share the definition with us.
Post-traumatic growth is both a process a process that you go through, and it's also an outcome. And what post-traumatic growth is all about are the ways in which the experiences we go through that cause us to struggle also lead us to be reflective and force us to take a knee and start to think about who we are and where we're going and why we're here in really thoughtful and constructive ways. And what happens a great deal of the time is that people who go through these difficult life experiences, these traumas and these losses, often report that in the aftermath of that experience, going through the process of post-traumatic growth leads them to report that their life has changed for the better in terms of it being more authentic and more meaningful and more purposeful than it was before they had that experience. And
So I'm not going to read through all the points on the right. Y'all, please feel free to go through and do that. But as I said, I'm mindful of time. So the points on the right just kind of expand upon what Josh said. Post-traumatic growth is a couple points I do feel are important that set post-traumatic growth apart from other perspectives that help to recover and process trauma are that post-traumatic growth is much more future focused. So it's not focused on the past trauma or the challenging event that happened. It's not about unpacking or reliving that. It's much more about the idea of how we can take what has happened and use the post-traumatic growth to process that and then turn our struggles into strengths. And that's a very condensed definition as well. The other important thing about post-traumatic growth, I think that is unique, is that it focuses on the effects of trauma. It focuses on how disruptive those experiences are for us, how they disrupt our relationships, how they disrupt how we view ourselves and how we feel and think about ourselves, how disruptive it is to how we view other people and our communities, and also how it can disrupt our spiritual or religious beliefs about ourselves. So again, that's just another thing that makes post-traumatic growth unique. So Warrior Path is one of our programs. A few highlights of that. Again, I'm doing the highlights version of everything here to be mindful of time. It is a non-clinical program. What that means is we're not doing therapy or counseling at any point in the program. We're also not using any kind of medical approaches or interventions. PATH is an educational program that's using retraining, and the goals are to gain whole body wellness. That includes our physical health, our mental and emotional health, and also our spiritual health. And by spiritual, I don't necessarily mean religious. For those folks that do have religious beliefs, that that aligns very well. But there is no religious part of PATH. We focus more on spiritual, having that sense of how we fit into the world. What can we do with our life? What is the meaning of our life and our experiences? So spiritual in some of those ways. So Warrior Path from start to finish, it's an 18-month-long program. The only part of the program that's face-to-face and that requires being, anywhere at a certain time is the first week of the program. And that first week is spent on our PATH campus, which is in North Florida. The rest of the 18 months of the program is all done electronically. And that focus for the rest of the 18 months is a blend on continuing the education that started during the face-to-face week of the program, as well as support and follow-up and accountability. And all of that is coming from the small group that goes through PATH together. So it's about a group of 6 that goes through the program for the whole 18 months. Some of the foundations of Warrior Path is the idea that people aren't broken and that there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong, so to speak, is that people just have not been trained how to struggle well. And Warrior Path really believes with the right training and learning and then using the right practices, people can stop just surviving day by day and surviving life and really start living. When we're living life, we're more connected to our experiences, we're connected to our loved ones and our environment. And Warrior Path, the education is giving that training and teaching those practices that are mentioned there. A big focus of Warrior Path is post-traumatic growth. I'll just go over a couple of these here. One thing I think stands out about PATH is that the whole program from start to finish is built on a foundation of transparency, honesty, and mutuality. And what that means is that we do not ask the participants going through the program to do something that the staff has not already done or is not willing to do there with them as it's happening. So it really creates that level playing field. You know, the staff are not better or smarter than anyone. We're all the same in that sense. Warrior Path also ties in historical and cultural warrior practices, which has been very significant for people to learn about and then to experience and practice themselves. And it's also a small group size, so that really allows for a lot of one-to-one interactions, both among the students, but also between staff and students. And as I said, feel free to read through the rest of these for some more context about Warrior Path. So our other program is our military support retreats. These are held in various locations, 10 months out of the year. They are held in both Georgia and Florida. They are 3 nights and 4 days, and this is the program where the military member gets to come along with their primary support person. They focus, it's about a 50-50 split as far as the focus. It's half focused on education, which we do through workshops and group discussions that our support retreat staff facilitate. And then the other split is on nature-based recreation activities. An important standout for our military support program is that the focus is on both the veteran and their support person. So we have found that oftentimes the support person is left out of veteran programs and services. And so when you compare, you know, what's out there for veterans and military members versus what's out there for their support people or their family members, you know, the military folks are on the much higher end of receiving all those things, while the support people are just as much as in need. And so we're very proud of the fact that our program focuses on both. Both are just as important during our program. So the military support retreat is also has a common theme of post-traumatic growth. The retreat is also not therapy. A lot of the activities are therapeutic, but at any point in the program, therapy is not happening, not on an individual level, a couples level, or a group level. So I always like to be upfront about that. Focus of the retreat is recreation, reconnection, and restoration. So one of the goals of the retreats are to restore. We do this through large group sessions, which our staff facilitate. It's about a 1 hour, maybe 90-minute workshop. We do one a day. The topics of this focus on things such as post-traumatic growth, communication skills, coping skills, how we carry our burdens and our stressors, and how to kind of unload those and shift those about. We also do small group sessions where we have groups anywhere from 4 to 8 of the dyads in a small group, with our staff just facilitating discussions amongst the small group, and also facilitating those relationships just amongst the participants, you know, allowing them to get to know each other a little bit better. And then we also, a few times throughout the retreat, we also break out into 2 groups. One group is just the military members. The other group is just the support people. We do expressive arts at this program. All of our activities, whether it's the discussion, the expressive arts, or the recreation, or even the workshops, they're all very hands-on and immersive. And then we also introduce the idea of gratitude practices and how that can support whole body health. Another goal of the retreat is reconnection. For those that have been in the military, a lot of them report, you know, coming back from service or from deployment, their soul has been changed, maybe lost, you know, fractured in some way. And they're carrying, you know, these heavy burdens, these, what you often hear, invisible wounds, and moral injuries. And all of these can lead to, you know, shutting down, turning inward, and being numb, which is where they are disconnecting from their loved ones and their social circles. So a lot of our activities are focused on that idea of reconnection. So the recreational activities really provide a unique opportunity for the couple or the, you know, the pair of two that came together to bond, to do an activity maybe they haven't done before, or maybe they haven't done often, or that gets them out of their comfort zone, but really just gives an opportunity to be present with one another and connect and also relax. Another goal of our retreat is recreation. So nature-based and recreational therapy activities have been shown, you know, through research to increase relaxation, reduce stress, support spirituality and spiritual growth, help with mindfulness and grounding, and all that obviously, you know, supports our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And there's a few lists here, or there is a list of the few of the activities that we do as far as the recreational activities. Some of these change based on location, but for the most part, they are really all the same. And some of these activities are purposefully getting people a little bit out of their comfort zone. It's, you know, incredibly special to see someone do a ropes course, even if they only do 5 minutes and not the whole, you know, 45 minutes of a ropes course when they are scared to death of heights. We've had someone get on a kayak who is deathly afraid of water and has never, you know, been in the open water before. So they're purposefully present a little bit of a safe and friendly place to get out of people's comfort zone. So again, I want to be mindful of time. I could, you know, talk for a good hour on our programs and things like that. But again, just want to be respectful, and we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this presentation. I'm sorry we couldn't be there live, but I hope this sufficed. And as I said, please feel free to reach out to me. Here's our website. You can find applications for both of our programs on our website. They have 2 different applications. I also forgot to mention both of our programs are at no cost, so there's no cost to attend. And once someone arrives to the program, we provide everything. So for our 3-night program, that's for the veteran and the support person, we provide lodging. Usually it's a hotel, sometimes we're at cabins, but we provide all that. We provide all the meals, and then of course all of the activities. We do not pay, or we're not able, we're working on it, but as of now, we're not able to pay for travel to the military support retreats. It's open to people anywhere. But we are not able to assist with travel costs at this time. We're working on it. For our PATH program, that is also open to people regardless of where they live. That program, that grant does allow us to pay for travel. So we've had people come to our Florida campus from the state of Washington, from California, from Virginia, from Alaska. And then of course, people who are within a few hundred miles, we're able to just reimburse them for their driving mileage. But that one does cover travel. And then of course, once they arrive, once again, we take care of everything, you know, all the meals. Once people arrive to PATH, they don't need a vehicle. Our campus is self-contained and has everything we need, and we provide everything. Thank you again. Hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Okay, we've been really going at it now for quite some time. And what I would like to do is just kind of put up this one slide, and then we'll just leave it at that for now. Just like for everyone to be mindful that there are resources and numbers that can be used and shared with those who may find themselves in crisis or know someone that is in crisis. And here are some numbers. As I had mentioned at the beginning, we will have this entire presentation to include the additional 3 presentations posted up on our website. We'll also, at the end of this, save and create the video to post onto our YouTube channel for everyone to then be able to go back and take a look at the rest of the things that we've had planned to show in the presentation. There were just a couple of more slides, but we believe they're just more like informational ideas and topics on what we're going to be doing in the future and some of the things that we've have planned for you all for later. So as we close out, if you do in fact have any questions, feel free to send us an email at info@coalitionofone.org, or you can reach out to us through our various emails and chats and conversations and the likes. And before you all leave, I hope that you all had a good experience by participating in what we presented today. And I would just encourage you all, if you want to continue to be a part of the community of us all talking and knowing what each other are doing and sharing what those activities and events are, just post your information, your contact information in the chat, and I will build a contact email for you all so that you can share in with one another, communicate with one another, find out who's in what specific lanes when it comes to helping veterans and trying to figure out how to support veterans in whatever the lanes may be. We'll just kind of continue to share information in that regard. So as I close, if anyone has anything that's just pressing that they want to say before I officially close it out, I'll give you an opportunity to say or do that now. Otherwise, I would like to again thank the presenters, but more importantly, thank all of you that are out there supporting military veterans in the various means and ways that you see the need for something that has to be addressed in the veterans community. And I still believe that's very important. So again, I would like to thank you all. I'm not sure if Jennifer's still on the line. If not, give everyone an opportunity to post their information into the chat. And I'm gonna stop the recording at this point, and I'll just leave the room open long enough for you all to share your information with us. And thank you all once again for participating in our quarterly town hall